This is going to be a spooky story time. Let me set the mood. The year was 1994, and I was about 14 years old, and my friends and I, we all ranged in ages between 13 and 16 years old. So something we all seemed to do on the weekends, we always ended up at my house. I think probably because my parents or my household was a little bit more permissive. My father was always off on the weekends playing in his band and wouldn't come home till late at night. My mother really didn't give a crap what we did. So we would always end up in my room, and eventually the lights would go off. We would all pile onto my bed and listen to music. And the music we listened to always had to be something dark and daydreamy and melancholy, and we'd just talk. Surprisingly deep discussions for people of our age. This one particular night, there was a girl who lived down the street from me. She was a little bit older, and her name, I'm going to change her name, we'll call her Amber. And Amber wasn't into the alternative scene. She wasn't goth in any way, but regardless, she was still very accepting of us, and vice versa. So it's a Friday night, and Amber's family is hosting some sort of religious function at their house, and one of the families are bringing a teenage son that's Amber's age and kind of pawned him off on her, and she was really uncomfortable about it and asked if she could just bring him to our house. Well, I say our house like it was my friend's house, but she asked if she can bring him to my house and hang out, and I said, sure, why not? The more the merrier. It was me, my friend Elena, Jen, and Anissa. And we were there, we're listening to Sisters of Mercy in my room, and no more than 10 minutes go by and there's a knock at my door. And as we make our way down the stairs, my mom had already let them in. The person who she brings with her came into view, and it's like we all caught a glimpse of him at the same time, and we stopped dead in our tracks and our jaws dropped. And the reason that this happened was because we were incredibly into this movie Hideaway at the time, and if you've never seen it, definitely recommend it. I'm going to put a link in the description below. But the reason that we were so into this movie, well, one of the reasons, other than the fact that it was really cool, was one of the main characters, whose name is Visago, who was the most gorgeous goth guy ever, who was also a demon and a serial killer, but we were obsessed with him. You know, teen logic, right? This guy that she brought with her, he looked exactly like Visago. The same hair length, the same cut, same in the face. He even dressed exactly like Visago, and the weirdest part is that he'd never even seen the movie. We found this out later.
Basically, is about taking on that evil part of yourself, that dark side of yourself that you don't know, that's too scary to look at, and that most people go 90 years of their life or whatever avoiding.
So as we're all stood there, frozen in our tracks, mouth agape, he breaks the silence and says, "Oh, Sisters of Mercy," because he hears it coming from my room. And we're like, he's a real goth too. So our personal Visago's name was Brian, and we invite Brian upstairs into my bedroom, and he falls right into the sprawled out on my bed with the lights off and listening to music. He is a very mysterious, deep, and interesting person, much like Visago, minus the murder. We're laying there, and he suddenly says, "Do you want to see something cool?" We're like, "Sure." And he says, "I'm going to change my face." What? He said, "I'm going to change my face into something else. Watch." So he sits up on my bed, and the only light in the room that's coming in is the moonlight, but our eyes have adjusted to the point where we can see each other's faces quite clearly. We're watching his face, we're all facing him, and his face, it collapsed, sort of, we watched it sort of like in a succession of three, like, collapsed, and suddenly, it was a lion's face. He legit had the face of a fucking lion, and we, of course, what's your natural reaction? We start screaming. My friend Anissa lifted open my window, which is just above my bed, and threw up onto the deck below. I had to clean that up later. None of us could explain how he did that, and of course, what is the first thing you say to a person that does something like that? How did you do that? And he just laughed and thought it was funny. We're like, no. How did you do that? And he said, "Do you want to see other faces?" And that night he proceeded to not only show us his different faces, which he said were faces that he had in a past life, but also his protector face, which was the lion, and then a robot face, which was something that he said he used on the astral plane. He talked about the astral plane quite a lot. Brian came to be a fixture. Every weekend he would come and hang out, and every weekend his presence was always something very dark and very mysterious, and we were just enthralled by him. He even showed us how to change our faces, and we would look at each other and we would watch each other's faces change. And this went on for probably, I would say, every weekend for about 2 months, and then he disappeared. That was it. We hadn't seen nor heard anything from him, and even his phone number was disconnected. It was like he disappeared into thin air. This is a memory that has always very vividly stuck out in my mind, and if I think back, I could still clearly see his face change, and our faces change, and my adult brain cannot make heads or tails of how that is physically possible. And over the years, I've told people this story before, and of course they look at me like I'm crazy and they ask me, oh, well, what drugs were you on? I could say with absolute certainty I have never touched a drug in my life, and I was stone cold sober that night, as were my friends. So over the years we talked about it, and we all tried to make heads or tails of it. And as far as myself, I have many different beliefs. I'm agnostic, but I'm spiritual, so my belief system is just a mishmash of a lot of different things. And shapeshifters are not in that category. They do not fall into my line of beliefs. But here I am with a memory of what only can be described as somebody who shapeshifted right in front of my face. And apparently I did it too, because everyone saw my face change. And I saw my friend's face change vividly. I can remember this. And as an adult, I cannot make heads or tails of it. And it was making me crazy. So one night I was on Facebook, and I was like, I'm going to search for this guy. I'm going to find him. I'm going to use my FBI freaking Google foo. Anything I can come up with, I'm going to find him. And I did. He was actually just on Facebook. I just had to type in his name. It wasn't really that much detective work that had to go into that. So I found him, and I sent him a message, sent him a friend's request, and I wasted no time. I just went right in there, and I asked him, I'm like, okay, you need to tell me, what the hell was that? I have very vivid memories of a human's face changing right before my very eyes. That doesn't make any sense. I need to understand why I have these memories, and I need to understand how you did that. And he said, I didn't do anything. You did it. And I was a little taken aback by that, and I said, no, I definitely did not do that. He said, no, you did. You saw what it was that you wanted to see. I just can't accept his explanation. It just does not make sense to me, because it would have to be some sort of collective hallucination for that to make any sort of sense. We all saw the same thing. It couldn't have just been me. How did we all see the same exact thing? It never happened before him. It never happened after him. And we tried after he disappeared, and we just could not do it. But he maintains to this day that it was entirely what it was I wanted to see. So I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I just annoyingly have a memory that defies logic, reason, physics. It just defies everything. And have any of you ever experienced anything like this at all? Do you have a person in your life that only when they were around did things just get weird? Well, I'm happy that my friends were there, because had it not been for them, I would think that I was absolutely insane. But the fact that they were there and we all remember the same exact thing, it helps. We don't have answers, but it certainly does help. So that is my spooky tale, my encounter with the unknown.